Welcome to Life in Red.
Being a nurse in a pandemic wasn't enough. Being a nurse and a mom in a pandemic wasn't enough. But now being a nurse, a mom, and a podcast host, because apparently you needed more to do. Is that right, Christie?
Yeah, just one extra thing. I mean, I kind of look at it as therapy and socializing. So I don't look at it as a job. It's I'm having a lot of fun with it. So I mean, I could be sitting on the couch watching the Kardashians at night, but instead I do this. So some would say this is progress.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I totally agree with you. When people ask how I kind of manage it, I'm like, I don't know. It's like I'm chatting with, it's like I'm going out for a drink. I mean, you have wine, I have water, so I'm not as cool, but as if we're just like shooting the shit over like over a drink, just bitching about life.
Your podcast is what got me interested in the conversational aspect of discussing stuff. I love that when I did your podcast back in April or something.
It was April. Holy man.
Yeah. And I love that. It was so comfortable. And that's exactly what it was. It was just chatting with a friend. And it's become social for me. You know, I've met people. I interviewed Stuntman Stu from Morning Radio a couple weeks ago. And I've never met him before. And we chatted for ages, you know, and that's the best part of it is I look at it as social too.
Yeah, no, for sure. Beyond the Bedpan, and I'm, just play a small role in this new endeavor of yours. That means a lot. So we had a lot of fun and talked about a lot of stuff. And that was back in April when I think we were still in lockdown. We were in the third wave.
Third wave.
We're like, okay, like what's going to happen? And summer was good. And now here we are where we're at, Omicron, and kids getting vaccinated, but is it enough?
Oh my God, where do you want to begin?
Yeah, where do we start about the shit show? But I mean, how has the last little bit been since we last chatted? Because there's been a lot of ups and downs, right? Kids finally were able to get vaccinated. They're back to school. We're all like, yes, I think we're finally there. Now we got this new variant to worry about, and we're still very unsure of what's happening. So, I mean, how has the last couple of months been besides this whole podcast endeavor you started?
I mean, if I was to summarize it in one word, it would be terrible.
Oh,
I mean, like my palms are sweaty and my heart's beating just thinking of all those things you just said. Like so much of it is a blur, to be honest. It's been very much survival mode for me, and probably for a lot of people, but for me in particular tonight. I went back to the ICU in April, and then I stayed there until the end of June. I needed some stability in my schedule, so I had asked to stay. My kids were doing virtual school. I needed to set up childcare, and it was a lot easier to work shift work and have those 5 days off at the time. So my manager and the ICU manager were okay with that. They let me stay, which was great. And then my last shift in the ICU was June 30th. I had the July 1st stat, and then I went right back to work July 2nd in my real job, in like my normal job. Mm-hmm. So I had zero break. This summer was good. I can't complain about the summer. And then the first day of school, we won this Hot 89.9 contest where the kids, the kids got to drive to school in a limo. It was so fun. It was my daughter's 6th birthday. She was so excited. And I took a vacation day. My husband had the day off. We always take the first day of school off and we drop off the kids and then we spend the day together, just have a date day. Mm-hmm. And it's like 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock, this huge hype up to going to school for the first time. And we get a call from my toddler's daycare that there's been a positive case. And we had to pick them all up by 10 in the morning on the first day of school, drive to Brewer, get the toddler tested. I stayed in the car with the older two. And then as they're walking out from the testing center, we got a phone call saying he actually wasn't the close contact. You don't need to get tested, but daycare's closed for the week. So we didn't need to get tested. We didn't need to pick up the older kids, but we did because we were told we did. And then we had to figure out childcare for the week for my toddler. And that has just been my life for the last September, October, November, for the last 4 months. Is someone is sick, they all have to be picked up, COVID test, wait for results, figure out childcare, go back to work, and repeat. So it's been very difficult. And I'm actually, I ended up going off on a stress leave 2 weeks ago. So I'm not actually working right now.
Wow. That just seems so turbulent. I mean, it's turbulent for everybody, but for parents, especially for healthcare, like it's just a constant ebbs and flows of like elation, then disappointment, then like heartbreak, that like it's just all these emotions that you have to like manage. And it's not even like weekly, it's like daily, it's minute by minute. You're getting phone calls, and same with my parents, like, and now we're entering winter. There's freaking colds and flus and all these other things like going around, but it's not COVID, but everyone's sick, and you have to like, it's just, I mean, like, I laugh because like I sit here and I'm like, man, this is a lot to manage for me. And then I talk to like other people. I'm like, oh, I'm like, holy shit. Okay, I got it. I guess I'm off the hook a little bit here, but it must be so tough to just manage mentally for yourself.
I disagree with you. Yeah, it's very, very difficult for us. And like, I could talk about it all day, and I could go into all the details, and maybe I will, but I don't think anybody under any circumstance should undermine how they're feeling about it.
Yes,
I'm a parent, and both of us work outside the home. So that's where our challenges are, is that we're expected to be at work, and no matter what. And if you're working from home, maybe you have a little bit more flexibility. If you're, you don't have kids, if whatever, if you're a student, but all of the stress is real. And I don't like that people compare it to me, because people do that a lot. They say, oh my God, like I hear your stories, because I share it. I like to share how real things can be. And people will say, I can't believe I complained about this. No, you absolutely are valid in complaining, and sharing your frustrations and your stresses. They're all valid. And yes, mine are tough, but so are yours, and they should never be compared to other people's.
True. Yeah, no, you're completely right. Since the last time we chatted, the ICUs were pretty full. I mean, how has hospital life, because I think over the summer, as vaccinations really started to accelerate, and until a little bit more recently, as we started to see an uptick in cases, a lot of people, I don't want to say thought the pandemic was over, but really thought we were past it, like we were on the road to being clear. How has the hospital been? I mean, until this point, I know in the next couple of weeks and months, it's probably going to be a different story, but until then, like, has it been a little bit more, I guess, business as usual, or like, are you still seeing a significant amount of COVID patients and things to deal with the pandemic, or even just catching up? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of that too.
Yeah, there's things that have improved, and then things that have gotten a lot worse. So, and this is probably the stuff that people don't talk about. Like, you look at the COVID numbers, and they are good. That was always the point, was to protect the healthcare system and make sure it doesn't get overloaded. And we've done that. We had a bad third wave, but since then it's been okay. And yes, there's been COVID cases. Yes, they've been young. Yes, they're mostly unvaccinated, for those wondering. And every life is important, when they come in, vaccinated or not. So maybe I shouldn't have said that. I don't want to make that an issue, but that is what we're seeing. But what I'm seeing more of, and probably more concerning, is when it comes to patients, there's been a lot of people coming in with what's called long COVID. So they've had COVID, and they are just riddled with problems. And it's so sad, because the people who have all the problems now are the people who got COVID in the third wave, or before vaccinations were available to them. and is heartbreaking because there was just nothing that they could have done to avoid it. These are people who were like, I was isolating and, my toilet broke and I needed a plumber to come in, and then suddenly I got COVID, like really, really sad stuff. And they haven't been able to go back to work. That's hard to deal with, just because I really feel for them. And their recovery is long, really, really long. And some of these long COVID patients were not necessarily hospitalized either. They had mild cases of it, and they just have a lot of respiratory issues. The other problem is staffing, which is no secret. It's in the media everywhere. We're critically short-staffed. So people have quit. People have quit nursing altogether, or they've left the hospital to go do something else. And we're just so short-staffed, and the patient load hasn't decreased because of it. So then what happens is, overtime, not necessarily mandatory overtime, but you are kind of staying extra hours or giving longer reports that keep you there longer. And nurses are burning out, such case in point. And the other part is when things go back to normal a little bit, our lives don't, as nurses, because we're still at work every day. We're still expected to be at work every day. Certain flexibilities that they had in regards to like COVID time off, paid sick leave to do with COVID tests are no longer a thing. So there's some unpaid days there. And if you're a parent, it's just constant days taken off. And the amount of stress it became unbearable for me. And I never thought I'd be that person. I always thought I can handle anything. I'm tough, I'm strong, I'm a fighter. I'm not going to become depressed. I'm not going to not want to get out of bed every day and then only think about when I can go back to bed that next night. I'm not going to let this phase me. Like, I'm going to be fine. And I'm not. And if that's happening to me, it's happening to a lot of people. They're just not talking about it.
There's things there I don't want to skip over, but obviously staffing is a big thing you're passionate about and something we should discuss. But I do want to get back to the long COVID, and especially the anti-vaxxers, and talking about what it was like having them protest the hospitals a while ago. But when we talk about staffing, I was talking to a friend who's a nurse and struggling, and I was like, a thing I say to everybody, but especially healthcare workers, right? Because you feel like you have that onus to help people. And I was like, why don't you take time off? Why don't you and they didn't want to not be there for their team because it's already so hard as it is. And I totally get that mindset. But, I always say to people, it's like, well, if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of other people as well.
Yeah.
There are multifaceted issues here on why people are quitting. Obviously, when we talked in April with yourself and Alicia, you both were open about your struggles with mental health and depression and anxiety and all those things. But there's also other issues as well that's really affecting it. I know do I get this right? Bill C-124?
Yeah, 124.
What is that? Because I've seen numerous amounts of healthcare workers and nurses who have been advocating around that. And I don't want to say protesting, but they've been chatting about it and really vocal about what that means. So what is it, and why is that such an issue for nurses that they're raising?
So Bill 124 is a bill that the government of Ontario put out that caps the salary, not just of healthcare workers. There's a lot of other people that are included in this bill. Off the top of my head, I think something in the world of education and the Children's Aid Society are included in this bill too. So healthcare workers, CPS, and education. So these are three people who have been really, really affected by the pandemic, right? It's been no secret that the amount of stresses at home have increased to child abuse. And like CHEO's come out with all these studies, especially with head injuries in the emergency department. education, no brainer. Like there was class canceled for how long and everyone had to adapt. And then healthcare workers. So not just nurses, people who fall under the healthcare tree. And that caps our salary. So what that does is it stops our union for being able to give us a raise and argue and fight for a raise. And it caps us at 0.9 something for 3 years. So if you look at just normal inflation, not considering how high everything is since the pandemic, we're not anywhere close to inflation. And like my retired dad got to a 2% raise this year. Like he's not even working. And he even said, he was like, I feel really guilty getting this raise. I'm like, no, you deserve it. You work all those years. But we deserve it too, you know? And how could you put a cap on morally, you know, like how could you do that to people who have been through what we've been through this year? You know, there was the heroes and whatever, your pots and pans and all that stuff, you know, thank you. But, you know, that doesn't pay the bills. So the reason it's an issue is, you know, my husband, he's so good. He always tries to play devil's advocate. And he said, you know, a lot of jobs have wage freezes for certain amounts of time. And I was like, okay, but there's nowhere else to go unless I go back to school and get my master's. So how do you justify a job like that doing such intense work that, you know, we're not adequately compensated for what we do. We're literally, we sometimes quite literally have somebody's lives in our hand. We are trusted and we're highly trained to save lives and to deal with intense crisis, and also be expected to cope with that mentally and take that home and deal with that at home where we have bills and families and all these things. So from I think it's year 7 or 8 in the union to year 20 or 25, there's no raise.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm. So that is a ridiculous amount of time in one's life. So say traditionally you come out of university and you work 7 years, you're in your late 20s. And I'm saying this somewhat traditionally. This is when you're purchasing a home, you're purchasing a car, your parents are getting a little bit older and you're having to help there. Maybe you decide to have children, then there's the daycare costs. That's a whole other podcast. And then you're stopping their pay for I'm not good at math, but what is that? That's like 14 years or something with no pay raise. And then you cap it. So you're putting a profession through the absolute worst, mentally, physically, emotionally. And then you don't allow our union to bargain for a raise. Like we're not asking for much. We just want something. and that's our rage against Bill 124 in a nutshell.
What do we see the future of this fight being? Because obviously there's a lot of other issues at play. And, you know, I don't think as many people are going into being nurses and healthcare workers, especially I would say after this whole thing where they're like, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
Like, are we, and I don't even know if you like know the answer, you can just kind of speculate, but like, are we going to be seeing more and more people quitting, protests, like people walk out? And then what do you think the effects of that will be? Like, how could we potentially see a collapse?
Yes, I'm predicting a collapse. I mean, you're going to see a few things. So you're going to see some generational differences, right? And this is where they're going to have the biggest problem. So all the people who could retire as the pandemic started, more or less did retire. They didn't want to go through that. A lot of them had retired just before that, especially at my workplace, because we had introduced an electronic charting system and they didn't want to learn it. They were like, oh, okay, we're a year away, we'll just retire. So we'd already had lost a lot of the senior nurses. The ones in that level just below that, a lot of them have left since the pandemic because of short staffing, or they're injured and they have to go off to other places because the workload is so high physically, right? And then you've got this generation who is probably maybe my age and younger. And they're going, fuck it. I have options. And I think nursing before was seen as a calling, a duty, like very Florence Nightingale, and this is my duty to take care of people, and this is what I need to do. And they put a lot of stuff on the back burner because, oh, this is just the job. But in my age group that I'm seeing, so people in their 30s are going, I'm not going to be treated like this. I have options. I can go back to school. I can go work for the government. I can go work for, Immigrations Canada. I can start my own business. I don't need to put up with this. I'm out of here. We're a generation that puts, we work to live. We don't live to work. And that's a problem for the public if we're not compensated adequately for our job, because we say, well, we're being kind of treated like shit. We're going to leave. We're going to find something else. And a lot of people are doing that. I've met 2 people in the last just couple months who have started their own business. And this is good. I'm proud of them. And I think it's really good of them to do that for them. But as a healthcare system, this is bad for the public because they charge. It's private, right? So if you don't have anybody to take care of you, there's always going to be someone there, but you're going to have to pay for it. And then this is kind of how I see the government privatizing healthcare. If that makes sense. I don't know if I explained that properly.
No, it does. And then it starts to affect, as always, the most vulnerable people in our society who aren't going to be able to seek care. Yeah. And one of the things that I want to get on the podcast, someone who really knows more about this, but with our aging population, and we're going to really see an increase of people who are older, and already as it is, just what we have baseline now, we do not have enough Generation Z or millennials to take care of boomers as they get into retirement age and old age. Yeah. Like we're already pretty screwed. Our economy is going to be pretty screwed, but the healthcare, our healthcare is already screwed, and we're not even seeing the large uptick we're going to start seeing with all the baby boomers who start entering nursing homes and retirement homes and start falling and getting injured or getting sick with cancer or other, whatever, going into the hospital. It's bad now. Mm-hmm. It's going to be worse in 5, 10, 15 years. And not only do I not see anybody really doing anything about this at a political or leadership level, I don't even see people talking about this really, except a select few of academics.
I'm trying.
Yes, you. Yeah. And there's advocates for sure. But we want to talk about the climate. Absolutely. It's scary. But right here at home, we are going to have a whole bunch of shit we're going to have to deal with real quickly. And I don't think we're prepared.
No, we're not prepared. And I had a friend leave the province because her daughter needed there's a lot more than her being autistic that we found out since then. But at the time, the funding here was so poor and the healthcare wasn't adequate for her needs. So she left. She packed up her family and she moved to Alberta. And because they had a better program for autism over there. And that's what people will do. I mean, people who need care like that, they'll just go somewhere else where they can get it. And that's the exact same for the workers, is people who want to be compensated for the quality of work that they do are going to go elsewhere, and they'll go to the States. We get double the pay if we just go drive a couple hours into New York.
So that's what my mom almost did when she was a nurse, and except she ended up having me, but her choice was to go to the States, and you get paid way better.
You do get paid way better. It's shocking how much more you're paid in the States, and their signing bonuses are large, and you're taxed and whatnot, but it's still incentive. And that's kind of what we're missing too in Ontario, is we're missing the incentive. And it's not good enough to just bring new nurses through the program. You have to you have to want the people who are already employed to want to stay. You need to offer incentives to the nurses you already have for a couple reasons. One, they're already trained and they already know what they're doing. And two, you need people to train these newcomers. And you need preceptors for new grads who are coming through the program. And you need senior nurses on the floors for when shit hits the fan. You need someone to go to. You can't just staff the place with a bunch of new nurses, and they will become the go-to people eventually. But when you're fresh out of university and you don't have any experience, you need the nurses with experience. So they need to start retaining who they have. They need to start making it appealing to stay. And that's what they're missing right now.
I mean, at this point, with where we're at now, would, even a 2% raise end up keeping, like, would that even solve anything? Say they get rid of this bill and you're able to get that very minimal but thankful raise of not even what our inflation rate is at right now. Would that even be enough? Because to me, like, it would seem that I'm not a nurse, the answer more than I do, but like, is it even worth it? Even as much as you might love it, like, it really is like.
So yeah, and inflation, isn't it like 4% or something stupid high right now? It's really high.
Month to month, I've seen like 9%. Like, so,
Oh
like,
my
yeah.
God. I think 6 months ago, 2% might have been enough. I think, when after the third wave, I think if we had gotten a raise, I think that maybe, probably more so. But now, since Bill 124, Doug Ford's set off the fire in so many nurses. And we've been vocal, some of us have been vocal. Nancy in Toronto, me and Alicia have been pretty vocal here, along with others, a lot of them coming out to the media talking about stuff. But one of the things we're hearing the most is the amount of abuse nurses receive on a daily basis. And that is what people are focusing on, the quality of the environment in which we work on. And I think if he had given the raise, it may have not led to the point where everyone was speaking. It would still happen, and it's still not right. But I think the focus has shifted against, okay, well, why do you think you deserve the raise? And here's all the reasons, including the amount of verbal, sometimes physical abuse that we've faced, all of the staffing issues and the mental health crisis that a lot of people are going through. So now we've really all opened up about these other issues in the profession. And I'm not sure that would have happened if we had gotten the raise. So I think at this point, people might be leaving because of the stresses of the job and not so much because of the money, and just wanting to be treated like a human being. And I'm not sure that's so much to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it was always one thing that you might have a patient who is abusive, whether verbally or physically, but now you're facing, like, it goes back to that, people protesting outside the hospitals, people like literally yelling at nurses as they walk by the street in their uniform. I don't want to like spread misinformation, but I swear I've seen a story of like anti-vaxxers like following nurses home. Like, it's grown into this, especially over the summer, once the vaccines started to really like happen and people started getting them. Like, it seemed to take it to this whole new level of unhingedness that I never thought, never in my wildest dreams, especially at the beginning, when again those pots and pans are buying you pizza, like, oh, nurses, healthcare heroes. And now all of a sudden, like, people are like spitting in your face after 2 years of absolute shit. Like, it's,
Yeah.
I don't even know where to go from here. I don't.
I mean, people spat in our face before the pandemic.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I think that's one of the things too that's missing, is that everyone kind of focused on nursing in the pandemic and all these problems, but all these problems were there before. We were short-staffed before. We were abused, emotionally, verbally, physically before. None of this is new. I mean, same with the PPE. We have patients on MRSA and the shingles where we wear N95 masks, for influenza where we gown up and wear the visors and the masks. And, we've done all this before, maybe not to the extent sometimes, like, especially if a unit's on outbreak, it's everyone who's on precautions. That's a lot. For the nurses to get dressed up every single time they go into a room. But all of this happened before, but the protesters, that struck a really sensitive chord in a lot of people. I picked up an ICU overtime shift after that protest, and I had a senior nurse tell me, I'm done. After that, I'm putting in my retirement notice. I might have worked an extra year where the nurses can go down to a 0.8, so they work one less shift every set. And she said, after that, I'm not putting up with that anymore. I'm quitting. So now not quitting, retiring. So because of this extremist group, we're losing a nurse, a senior, highly qualified, highly trained, highly respected, critically trained, critically care trained nurse. And that's one person gone. You know what I mean? Because of that. So the protests were just so bizarre to me. They didn't make any sense. I didn't understand what they were doing outside the hospital. The whole thing was just really stupid and almost laughable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they know what they were doing either. Obviously,
No.
they weren't very rational or well thought out people to do that. Like, what? There's just so much to go into there, but I don't even want to give them the grace of trying to figure them out.
No, but the most upsetting part about those protesters was I had a patient and she was in a room where you overlook the street. And she was so upset. She was like, what is this? Like, I'm scared. I don't understand what's going on. Are they going to come into the hospital? Because nurses we were talking about it, and I'm sure they picked up on the vibe and maybe overheard some stuff. Her room was right outside of the break room. But I just sat with her and I was like, just ignore them. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but just ignore them. They're not the ones in here taking care of you. But that's the worst part, is that rolled over into how a patient, someone who's vulnerable, how they felt.
Mm.
And that made me feel sick to my stomach. And I was just so mad walking to my car that day, watching them. And I was just like, you guys make me sick. Like, and they come across like they're representing nurses too. And that's the worst part of it.
Well, I think some were nurses who maybe organized it, or that might have been fake, but I think it was nurses who were against the vaccine mandate, or at least some of them were.
Yeah, I went on there. I went into a terrible rabbit hole that day. I looked them up,
no.
But they were called. They called themselves Canadian Frontline Nurses, and a couple of the nurses, they are nurses, but they were suspended, and one of them was at the Capitol riots and stuff. Like, it was just such a bunch of bullshit and just not what we needed. It was the absolute last thing we needed at that time, and it was like kicking us when we were down.
It did an incredible amount of disservice to the work you've been doing, because people, especially who are against vaccines, and I had people comment this to me on social media, that, oh, well, if these nurses aren't getting the vaccine and they're scared, they must not work. Like, just totally going in the face of everything they said they believed in at one time, or I don't know a better way to phrase that, but the amount of harm that these people did, it set everything back for vaccines and nurses, at least a few months, and just gave more ammo. I mean, you don't have to get into it because I don't want you to get in trouble, but I don't even understand how you could work with people like that, have them on your team. It would just be awful.
I don't know anybody. So I'll be very honest. I haven't come across anyone personally who's been against the vaccines. I think it's a very small amount of people. And I'm happy I haven't come across it. And now it's mandatory. So if you're there working, you're vaccinated. Sorry. but I just don't have any time for it. And I think I've really had to remove myself from pretty much every social situation I come across at work just for like my own sanity. Like I
Mm,
can't listen to it all day. It really gets in your head and really messes with you. And it's very easy to overhear something that's not necessarily true.
mm.
Like you could be hearing something that's, he said, she said, and as you're walking by, you could hear that and think something different of it. So I just like headphones in, head down, do my job, take care of my patients as best as I can, and know that I'm vaccinated and that I'm protecting myself. And hopefully that also adds a layer of protection to my patients. And I just can't think about anybody else, because if you start getting wrapped up into that person's not vaccinated, what are their thoughts on it, what are they saying on social media, it's such a downward spiral. And with everything going on with the pandemic and at home and the schools, I just couldn't take any more of it. And even with trying to cut that stuff out, I still reached a max of what I could handle. And I tried to not get involved in those protests, and that was really hard.
Mhm.
And do I contribute that to part of my like downfall? Yeah, probably a little bit. That was a point where I got really, really mad. And when it comes to my coworkers, I can't. I have a handful of, people on my team or people who I know personally who I talk to, and everyone else I just have blinders on, if that makes sense. I
I
hope that
mean,
doesn't sound cold.
but you gotta protect yourself, and I'm sure
Mhm.
you're not, probably you and all your colleagues probably kind of have a similar mindset because you have to protect yourself and your own mental health. Like it
Mhm.
to give in to all this shit. I mean, like I think we're all doing it. Like I especially like you can't give in to all this shit right now. There's just so much. There's
I
so
can't.
much information and disinformation. What's true? What's real? So much conversation. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I went down a rabbit hole before and a downward spiral because of it. And I protect myself all the time now from it, especially from social media. Um,
Yeah. I actually just tweeted. I tweeted yet. I've actually private messaged them a few times. Ottawa Public Health. I find I try and stay off Facebook for the most part. I find it really toxic with the comments. There's something about that platform that really has like all the crazies come out. And on the Ottawa Public Health website, whenever they post something, they post an article filled with information, research based information. And in their comments is just like dumpster fire people
mhm.
and garbage comments. And I messaged them a couple times on different platforms and was like, can you guys follow in CBC's footsteps and turn off your commenting? There's really no need for dialogue. When you're putting out a news article, something with research and evidence-based facts, there is no need for commenting. And if someone disagrees with it, then they can do their own research and they can do their own post. But when you open up the city of Ottawa, which is the country's capital, like it's not just people who live here who are watching this. And the amount of false information that people post under that is mind blowing. And I tweeted out today, would you guys consider turning off your comments? And I got a couple trolls, say some nasty stuff. And then I got a lot of like people who agree. So I'm hoping that they'll do that, because I find that their Facebook group is the worst one out there right now.
I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but I'll DM you the name of their social media manager.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you.
But
'Cause
I don't disagree with you. When it's public information like this, we don't need comments and questions and people
no,
all chatting in the like it's just. And I'll tell you, as someone who works in social media, the reason it seems like there's two kind of main reasons why Facebook is kind of like the shit show of social media when it
yeah,
comes to this stuff. One, most of the younger generation only uses it for family, friends, like quick posts. They don't really engage too much with the articles in terms of commenting, liking, sharing anymore. The second is the algorithm pushes this type of content to people who engage with it frequently. And who engages with these things frequently? People who are, and it's the same with news articles, who are trying to disprove or argue, or right, like, because they're just on it all day. And that's
Yeah.
why, like, rational people aren't usually in the comments anymore, like arguing, because it's just like it's not worth anybody's time or
Yeah.
sanity to
Do you know
try
how
arguing.
hard it is though to not reply to these people?
Oh,
Like, I am confrontational and I see these things and I'm like, are you insane? But no, I've really gotten good at that, is just stepping back and being like, not my circus, not my monkey. But it also kind of is my circus and my monkey, because it's
yeah.
these idiots who don't follow any of the guidelines, who end up admitted in the hospital. So
Yeah, no, you're completely accurate. But I mean, you arguing, you could bring up every point of science you can, and it's not going to change their mind.
it's
So
not.
it
On
might
a
make you.
total side note, have you seen the Reddit subreddit Herman Cain Award?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen like the subreddit. But I've heard of that thing.
It's
Yeah.
pretty dark, but if you ever are looking for something new to read, take a few minutes and check it out, because it's it's really sad, but it's also like, this is the only way that people get it. Some
Yeah.
people, and that's so sad, because it could be prevented and they just don't do it.
Yeah. No, it's at this point of the pandemic, it's like what more can we do? And it for me, not even as a healthcare worker, the hardest part is like, deep down that the only way you're ever going to reach these people is compassion and just understanding and not being angry and just encouraging as much as you can without reacting.
Mhm.
Or they get COVID, or someone they love gets COVID and gets really sick and either dies or long COVID. Like, that's really the only two ways they're going to change their mind. And it's just
Yeah.
so unfortunate, because there's nothing really else you can do. You can
No.
get mad as you want. It might make you feel better in the moment, but it's also going to make you feel like shit arguing with these people. And it's just so sad. And I feel more for healthcare workers, because like you said, then they're in the ICU and you have to take care of them. And like, we had the answers all along.
Mhm.
And now it's just right. We have to just go through this circle all the time. It's like,
I saw a TikTok video yesterday, and it was a nurse. I think she was in the States. And she basically, if I can find it again, I'll send it to you. And she said, at this point in the pandemic, I clock in, I do my job, and I clock out. I'm not going to try and change your mind. I'm not here to do anything else except for clock in, do my job, and clock out. And that's it. You have my best self at work, but that's it. And it really struck a chord. I was like, damn, she's right. Like, it was to that point where I was going in and I was like, oh, I'm here. It's 8:00. Okay, that's great. And then I'm constantly staring at my cell phone, waiting for it to ring to go pick up a child, or to hear there's been a case or whatever, and someone's got to go for testing and blah, 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 blah. It was just a revolving door of problems. And she spoke to me. It was like I was telling that story. She's like, clock in, clock out, whatever. Like, I don't care anymore. And there definitely is. I wouldn't say I feel that at work, because I haven't personally come across anti-vaxxers or anything like that, but I have in my personal life. And, I actually got into it with a friend of mine, and she's vaccine hesitant. We'll call it that, whatever. And I was really mad at her. And like I said before, like, you just have to not let your brain go there anymore for your own well-being, because if that's the case, you're going to just be mad at everything all the time.
Yeah.
And you can't do that.
I was supposed to have a gentleman on my podcast, but I got ghosted the day of the interview. But he studies conspiracies and especially into this whole movement towards wellness, which both you and I are very much sort of into, in terms of, like fitness and taking care of yourself and mind and all that stuff. I'm not against wellness, but it was this idea of how it's become cult-like and this
What?
idea of like purity. And because did you see that thing where like anti-vaxxers, like everyone kind of thought it was like, like the old 50-year-old man in his basement, but it turns out it's like 42-year-old white women who vote liberal are the most likely to be anti-vax. And a lot of it has to do with like the mommy culture and like wellness culture and this idea of
Oh,
like purity and that our natural systems can take like control, right? Like it was just really struck a chord. So I found someone who was writing about it and doing research on it, and I wish
that's so
they had it
interesting.
on, but it took me completely by surprise. But as I look at my social media, a lot of the people who I mean, it's anecdotal, right? It's just people I come across, but most of the people are like wellness influencers who are all like always against lockdown, always against vaccines. Like you look at Doug Ford's daughter, same thing. She's a wellness influencer
Hmm.
peddling misinformation. It was just really interesting that it kind of flipped the dynamic on its head.
I can't even with Doug Ford's daughter. I I watched that interview with her on her treadmill. Did you watch that?
Yeah, it was
I don't
yeah.
even have words. It's so rare that I'm speechless. And I was like, this is who's running our province. Like this is family of who's in charge of us. This is not going to go well.
Explains a lot.
It does explain a lot. Do you remember Rob Ford? Like
Yep.
it just kind of became that he just doesn't exist. I mean, I know he passed away and it's not a nice story, but it's like everything that happened with him just I feel like it didn't happen or like it wasn't real. And then then like Doug Ford has come out and he is just as kind of crazy, and like we let these people run our province. It just blows my mind. Sorry.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I
I
mean,
digress.
yeah, I mean it's the Trump effect. It's the right. We have a split province really when it comes to politics. Like we kind of are more liberal, but
Hmm.
with conservative politics. And really that doesn't come down to policy. That's just kind of what people say. And that's, I mean, Rob Ford was a circus, like the crack scandal,
I know.
more than more than enough to eat at home comment. Like
Remember
it
he like
just,
knocked that woman over in Congress one day? Like
yeah,
he was a train wreck. And rest in peace. I don't want to talk ill of the dead, but he was a disaster. And then we still voted in his brother after all that, and like at some point it's our fault.
well, I mean, it's not my fault. I
Not
never
my
voted
fault
for
either.
them, but you're right. Um, what's the mood like right now? Because we're at a very weird time where there's hope. I mean, I know your kids got vaccinated. All my siblings just got their first dose, and there was a lot of elation.
Hmm.
Now we're in this uncertainty of what's this next variant going to be like. Life is sort of almost back to normal in a lot of cases, but not quite. And now we don't know what to think. We don't know what the next couple of weeks are going to be like. What's the mood like in the hospital? Is it like anxiety? Is it deflation? Is it a little column A, a little column B? What are nurses and healthcare workers feeling right now?
So I mean, I haven't been there in a couple weeks, so I can't speak to like currently today. But when I left, the mood was tired. Everyone is tired. And there was quite a lot of units on COVID outbreak when I left. And that's exhausting because you are gowning up and, visors on every single time you go into a room, every single time. And that for 12 hours is exhausting. And I think there's a shift coming. I've gotten some like cryptic emails and spoken to some people who have kind of hinted towards change, and it's not a secret. It's there's job postings and whatnot, and I think the culture is changing. They have to switch to a different type of collaborative care nursing model. They have to, because with the short staffing issue and patients are not decreasing, they have to do something. So change is coming, I think. And there's a little bit of hesitancy towards it. And there's also a little bit of relief. Okay, like at least we're going to do something. Lots of role changes, extra management positions coming up. And they're going to be bringing in RPNs and do more of like a team nursing approach when they're short staffed, and having a bigger resource nurse pool. So that means like nurses don't necessarily know where they're going to work that day, but they're scheduled for a day and they're put where they're needed. So they are changing things a little bit to kind of adapt to this short staffing. Is it a long-term solution? I don't know. But it's being recognized that nurses are not doing well, I think, in my opinion. There's been a lot of push towards wellness, and I personally feel like there's a lot of support out there, but it's not easy to navigate, which is what I found. To find a therapist is like pulling teeth. It's impossible to navigate the system, and then it's impossible to talk to someone, and then you have no idea who you're talking to, and if they know anything about what you've been through or what you're currently going through. So it's there for you, but it's also not super user friendly, if that makes any sense.
Oh, that's my realm.
Yeah. And so that's frustrating. And when you're not your best self and you're not functioning fully, it should be the easiest type of world to navigate to get help. And it's just not. So I think that there's change coming. So I think there's some hesitancy towards it. There's some welcoming towards it, depending on who you are. But also there's just no end in sight. And I mean, personally, I blame not everyone getting vaccinated. And I know that that's not fair. It's not a fair statement, but I do think if more people had gotten vaccinated sooner, some of this could have been avoided. And I'm not talking about the hospital. I'm not talking about Ottawa, but the world, like South Africa, for example, right? This is where this new variant has come from. And they're at like 20 or 30% vaccination rates. Why are they not getting vaccinated? Why do they not have the vaccine? Why is it not being pushed everywhere? And that's what frustrates me too, because you can't stop people from traveling and seeing family. I'm not talking about luxury vacations. I'm talking about visiting family, funerals, weddings, births of babies, grandparents. You can't stop people from traveling. This whole problem is global. And we have, from what I hear, we have so many vaccinations just sitting around. Why are we not helping other countries that don't have it? Why are we not donating to them? And why are we not sending people to go do vaccinations? And this is just not an Ottawa problem. It's not an Ontario problem. This is something global at this point. And it's not going to stop. There's not going to be an end in sight until we have global vaccinations. And that right now with the new variant is something that is in my head, is why are these countries not vaccinated, and why do they not have access to it?
Yeah, we all, I think the people who followed this always knew this was going to happen again. A
Yeah.
new variant would emerge. Experts have been warning. So when this, first was found in South Africa and Botswana and then in Europe, and how quickly it came out, like everyone's just like, we didn't know this one, like with all the mutations and what that's going to mean. That's what causes a little more anxiety, but we always knew variants were going to happen. And like, it's interesting. So when we look at like the poorer countries in Africa, some of the poorer nations, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Yemen, just places that can't afford it and are relying on the donations, is very slow. But then you look at countries even America is not doing well. I think they're at like 50-60%. You look at Eastern Europe, that is, we look at Austria and what they have to do. They're going to start finding people daily who don't get the vaccine by February. Eastern Europe's very opposed to, they have a lot of it. Russia, who's like, I think they're still leading the world, if not top. They're still vaccine like hesitant. They're like, I don't care, I'm not getting it. Right? Like, so we have these two issues. We have people not getting supply, And then we just have just lack of education, information. I mean, South Africa has supply and they just have a huge rate of like just people who don't want to get it despite it all. And it's just for us who Canada's done relatively well with vaccinations compared to the rest of the world. It's like climate change, right? We can do all we can do and we do a decent job at it. And then we rely on the rest of the world. And now we're pretty much doomed. And, you know, I don't want to think pessimistically about the rest of the world and where we're going to go. But I mean, I don't see it getting much better at all.
Me neither. And it's such a Debbie Downer way to think about it, but it's true. I really believe that. I don't see there any change. And what scares me the most out of that is the vulnerable people who, the handful of reasons why you actually can't get a vaccination. Children, like yes, 5 to 11 are able to get vaccinated now, but they're still not going to get their second shot until maybe February. And then what about babies to 4? I have a toddler. And what if he gets sick? He's maybe asthmatic. He's had some respiratory issues over the last little while. And, what if he gets sick? And what about the elderly? I think the worst thing that I see in misinformation and on that stupid Facebook group is, oh, you got COVID and oh, I guess vaccinations didn't really work for you.
Mhm.
No one said that vaccinations are 100% against getting COVID. What they said was you have a significantly lower chance of being in the hospital or the ICU. This is a layer of protection. It's not a magic wand. This is not Hogwarts. And that's what bothers me the most is no one, like whenever they go after false information, it's always attacking someone who got COVID, who got vaccinated. It's not, oh my gosh, I wish them the best. Or
Yeah.
if even a kid, there was a kid in the news. And someone was like, do they have any comorbidities? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's still a child and they still have COVID in the hospital. And you don't get to say that because you're trying to say that vaccines don't work.
Yeah.
It's just horrible.
Yeah. It's, I mean, the amount of hope I've lost in society and people, and I'm someone who loves people and I try to tell people as best I can. It like, I don't know anymore. So I don't know. I want to talk about the podcast before I let you go. Beyond the Bedpan, episode 7 was just released yesterday. The Stuntman Stew. I know you mentioned it kind of with, me and our conversation in April, but what else goes into this? Because you've already had sort of, it's not just healthcare people. You've kind of had a lot of different people in your first couple episodes. So what's going on with that? As the wine hits the back of the throat in the wrong way.
No, I'm just getting over a cold. Eventually the kids, all of their sickness ended up on me.
Being a parent.
So I just got my voice back actually to cancel a podcast the other day because I had no voice. So yeah, I had Stuntman Stew on. And the point is to, I've said a lot of like negative and honest things in this conversation because, it's real. But the point of the podcast is to take a different spin on it. And it's to try and get some public awareness. So nurses are vocal. Nurses have been out there. We've said our piece and we're not being listened to. So the next person or people who we need to speak up and to get the attention of is the public. They're the ones who are voting. And I think there's some people who think healthcare doesn't really affect them. I've never been sick. My family's healthy. All my loved ones are healthy. But then they hear a story like my second guest, Jeanette, who was young, healthy, and in a car accident, and then how that affected her life. And then so people who have maybe been in a fender bender who maybe got some whiplash or whatnot can maybe relate to Jeanette and think that could have been a lot worse for me and healthcare could have affected me the way it affected her. And so that's what I'm getting from a patient's perspective, is I'm trying to open people's minds to the fact that healthcare affects every single person, whether it's you directly or indirectly, or as an employee or whatever, it affects you. Now, you could argue other provincial issues like education, maybe that doesn't affect you. I mean, in the long run, for like, definitely, but yeah, definitely. But
look at us now.
yeah, but in the long run, yes, but people don't often think in the long run. But a car accident, a heart attack, a stroke, that could happen to you tomorrow. So I'm trying to get their attention as if this could be you. And then I'm also interviewing nurses of different professions that are not just in a hospital, so that if people are thinking of leaving their job, maybe they don't leave nursing altogether. You know, maybe they go into cosmetic nursing, or maybe they go into the dental world doing sedation dentistry, or maybe they start their own business doing something that they're really passionate about. So I'm trying to get, there's a lot of different areas of nursing that people just don't know about. So I'm trying to get them to tell their story, so that nurses who are listening can say, oh, maybe instead of leaving nursing altogether, I could just try something new and stay in the profession and build my own little empire. So that's kind of the goal of the podcast. And I've also just found it very therapeutic. I love speaking to people about their stories. I like, debriefing my own story with them. Like, I had Alicia on, and, we more or less just talked socially for an hour, and it was great. And whenever I'm done filming a podcast, I feel amazing. I'm in such a good mood. I'm so uplifted, and it's like this boost of serotonin, and I feel really good. So it makes me happy. It's a hobby. And, you say, like, where do you find the time to do it? We kind of do it together as a family. So my husband does all like the editing and the music, all this. Like, I'm not very good with technology. And so he does all that stuff. I come up with the ideas. My son likes to play around with it as well. He's really into computers. And, they're all really interested. Like, my kids ask me almost every night, do you have a podcast tonight? Who are you talking to? And it's just, it's something really nice to do. So it's really added to my life. Whether I get a lot of listeners or not, I don't know. But, well, I do know it's not that many, but it doesn't matter. Like, I like it. And if I reach one person who goes, oh, I had no idea that that's what was happening in the healthcare world, maybe I'll do a little bit more research before I vote in June. Then I've done a good job.
All right. So that means we're gonna have to have another conversation before voting time.
Yes,
we're really gonna get super deep. I relate to that so much. It's so true. And even when I'm talking about a sadder subject or a heavier subject, whether it's something about, what's going on in the healthcare system, or mental illness, or something, race like Black Lives Matter, or Indigenous fight, or, trans issues, things that are deep, and they, have to put a trigger warning, and can really affect me. I actually leave that just as well as a positive one, because connecting with someone on such a deep, intimate level, and really, like, I'm not looking at my phone, not looking at my computer. I'm in this conversation, connecting with another human being. There is something, it fills my soul.
Yeah.
It really, really does. And you're right. Like, the serotonin boost, the learning from it, and just the conversation, because, I didn't speak to anybody today. I didn't even open my mouth to think, other than to say swear words, because I was working. Right? I'm in my apartment all the time. Like, it's been such a beautiful experience, especially over this pandemic, even though I started before.
Yeah.
I love it. And I still don't even have that many listeners, and this is going to be episode 128. So, I mean, if it ever does, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But you're not doing it for other people. You do it for
No.
you, right? And you do it for something that you're passionate about. And I saw that, like, you really inspired me with that. And then I began listening to podcasts, and nothing like yours or mine. Like, I listen to garbage. Like, I love Two Bears, One Cave is my favorite.
I love Bert Kreischer. Oh
yeah,
my God,
he's
so
a
good.
lot though. He's a lot.
Yeah.
And then I listen to Giggly Squad, and I listen to yours. I listen to Quads, and who's the other one? Something Was Wrong. I don't know if you've ever listened to that. It's really good. So I have like, I got into all of those over the summer. And then I was like, man, I like writing, and I get an outlet from writing, but I don't get that dialogue. And I want that dialogue. I want that socialization factor of it. And exactly what you said. Like, I love connecting with people. It's something I really enjoy. So even if I only get 20 listeners or 50 listeners, I don't care, because it's me doing something that makes me feel good.
Yeah. It takes time. It's all about just consistency. That's what I always tell people when they start podcasting. It's just keep doing it. As long as you're having fun, you don't find it too overbearing. If you need to take a step back, like anything, take that step back. I took 2 mental health breaks this year.
Yeah. I'm on one right now.
Yeah. So, but it's as long as you're having fun, like it's good. And then you meet absolutely incredible people. Like, we connected. I mean, I'm looking at like, I don't know if you know Alex from Time for Your Hobby, who, he's great. Becca, the unashamed alcoholic, like Quad, I had friggin' just before the pandemic. Yeah, you just meet such amazing, incredible people, and then you become friends, and then you meet in real life, and you're like, whoa, this is weird. It's so fun.
Yeah, like, I'm still pretty antisocial. I'm an introvert. I'm not ready for real people yet, but yeah, it's so much fun, and I really like it. So I have you to thank for that, because you really you were really my intro to this type of stuff, and maybe we could give Casey a shout out too, because she's the most supportive human being on this planet. She's
Casey,
just the best.
She inspires me so much.
Like, as a human being.
Yeah, to like give back and support my friends, and like I've never met a single person like her.
Me neither.
Despite everything that she goes through herself.
Yeah.
And as a nurse, to like just like A+.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. She wants to do a Meet Your Hosts episode with me, and I'm so nervous about it because, usually like I'm the one asking the questions. But yeah, I'm gonna take her up on that, I think.
Do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, it
tips.
should be fun. I wanted to ask you, what is your like biggest lesson that you've learned since doing a podcast? Like, something a mistake you were doing in the beginning that you would change, or that what I mean?
In terms of life, or about podcasting specifically?
Podcasting.
Ooh. I still say and like a lot, which I try to cut out, but it's like inherent in my being that I do it in meetings. I do it everywhere, but it's something I always think about. I think it's better to just like, it's learning how to make people comfortable, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've always been good at that, but as I talk to more and more people and start to learn social cues and when a question might make them uncomfortable, and how I can maybe rephrase things to make it more comfortable or come out right. Asking questions seems easy, but it's not. And it's not always easy to keep the conversation flowing.
Yeah.
So it's, how do you do that? How, even, some people might not give as much as others. Some people are just naturals and they get it. But I think it's really just how to frame questions to get the best out of people.
Yeah.
And to make them feel as though they are empowered and they are confident and they are able to answer this question, even if they're uncertain, in a confident and great way. Because, there's so many people who be like, oh, I'm sorry if I spoke too long, or that. I'm like, no.
Keep going.
Go for 10 minutes if you want. If you have 10 minutes of something to say, I'm happy to just, let's go.
Yeah. I love the active listening part. I tend to, I'll admit it, I can take over a conversation, and this has forced me to learn how to actively listen to people. And I love that part. And I notice it in my daily life too, instead of being so, self-admittedly self-absorbed, sometimes I can take a step back and be like, no, I want to know about you. And I now can ask you these questions. But one thing I would do differently if I was to go back is I started advertising my guests before I had interviewed them. And then, as you know, you get ghosted. And then I have to delete stuff. I'm like, oh yeah. So that politician in my riding who said he'd be on my podcast just never replied to me. And I never, I never dated online. So I didn't really get the
Oh,
ghosting thing till now. But I was like, why isn't he replying to me? Like, how come I have to message him again? And how many times is desperate? And I was like really in my head about it.
yeah, get used to that. People will be like, oh, I'm so down. You'll set a time, you'll send them a link, everything's good, they confirm, and then just that day, you just poof, and then you send an
Gone.
email like, hey, can we reschedule? And just I mean, I'm so used to that from my business world and dating life, but as a podcaster, like it'll happen and you'll be setting something up with someone and they'll stop replying. I mean, I could
Yeah.
probably be at like 160 episodes with the amount of people who've like ghosted. So
Oh, that's brutal. And I have been known, a lot of people with like social anxiety to cancel. And this is another good tool for me too, to not do that, because I'm like, oh no, someone's probably showered. Somebody's probably like had to figure out Zoom. Like, I'm not going to cancel and I have a commitment tonight. And so like for my mental health too, which is again, a whole other podcast, this has been really beneficial. But yeah, like I had someone a couple weeks ago, a huge name in the nursing world. Um, and I'm sitting here like waiting patiently with all my notes and stuff. She's not showing up, not showing up. And I call her and she was like, oh, it's not on my schedule for tonight. Like, okay. Like, all right, thank you. And that was just it. And I was so nervous. My palms were sweaty and then nothing. So it's kind of disappointing, but I
yeah,
guess I have to get used to it.
I mean, I get it. People have shit come up. They don't always, they're busy. People have anxiety, all that stuff. Totally understood. Even
Yeah.
if they miss it and they email after and they're like, I'm so sorry. Like totally get it. Like that's totally
Hmm.
cool with me. I understand it as a person who juggles many different hats. But like, yeah, it's the people who don't always give courtessy at times.
Yeah. I
But
mean, I suppose the alternative is me just like going downstairs and watching Vanderpump Rules. So, it's not a loss.
yeah, I mean, I'm just on TikTok, so
Oh
like,
my God. Can we talk about TikTok for a second?
yeah,
I'm,
I
you
love
guys
TikTok.
got me obsessed. I, I'm really offended that I'm not an immediate TikTok star. Like I'm like only 100 views. How dare you? Like, how come no one is interested in this? This is hilarious.
Yeah, it's such an interesting platform because
I love
you
it.
can have something that like the biggest one I got was like 400 and some thousand views.
Oh,
And
really?
then
What was it?
uh it was me dancing as Harry Styles in a suit jacket with no shirt on.
So I think that that's the kind of stuff that gets a lot of views though. And like,
But
I'm just not willing to dance on TikTok yet.
which yeah, but it's funny, right? Like so that did it, went viral, whatever you want to call it, but I didn't get any follows. Like really. I got some, but if I make like a dating TikTok that goes really well. Like I did one where I updated my Hinge profile with a voice prompt about going to therapy and I did it as like a radio commercial. And like that stuff, it got like 40,000 views, but I got like hundreds of followers from it.
Oh
It's
my
so weird.
God. How come? I think I saw that one.
Yeah, it's so weird. I don't really know, like the algorithm is just different. And as I tell like the people in my life, because I work in social media as like the announcers, I'm like, it's again, consistency. Just keep putting things out that are either funny, relatable, entertaining, or authentic. And like it might not always hit, but if you just keep doing that and be true to who
Yeah.
you are, like you'll develop some sort of audience. And now I have friends. I literally have
I
friends I've
love
never
that.
met across the world
Mhm.
who we DM each other on TikTok.
Oh, that's the best. I came across that a little bit on Instagram and I got a reel. I did it with Liam. It was like, what is name something that you're supposed to like, but you actually find really annoying. And then I like dubbed to a picture of my
Yeah.
toddler and it got 1.2 million views. And I was like, holy shit, like that's legit viral. I got a ton of followers, like thousands of followers off of it. And then I was like, then I discovered TikTok. Like Instagram just means nothing to me anymore. It's like I've broken up with my high school boyfriend for my bigger and better university jock. Like that's what TikTok is. It's so fun.
Instagram now is just a place to recycle TikToks.
Yes, you're 100% right. Like that's all I do.
And now they're rejigging their platform to be like TikTok, like everything. Like, so now photos don't do as well. It's all about reels and short form content. And it just, they along with Facebook got too greedy. They wanted you to pay for views, whereas platforms like Twitter and TikTok, I mean, it's a little more hit and miss, but like it's much more organic and authentic.
It is. And my algorithm on TikTok seems to have found the adult ranting really popular. So that's where I go, and I love it. I think it's so funny. And I asked you how to do a stitch the other day.
Yeah.
And because I don't know how to do this stuff, right? Like Casey for Instagram basically like helped me build my whole Instagram account. I was like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And then you have helped me build my TikTok account. So there's always someone in charge of my social media.
got your team.
Yeah, my team. But yeah,
did you figure it out?
I did. And
Okay.
I posted it today. And it's just like the dumbest thing. But the best part about TikTok, this is my favorite part about it, is that no one who follows me, and let's be clear, there's not a lot of people who follow me, but there are only you, Casey, my husband, because I made him get an account so he could like my stuff, and one of my coworkers, Kim. So you guys are the only people who know me. So I post with I'm not self-conscious at all. I just put up whatever I want and I love it. I just have fun with it. Yeah. And I don't want anyone who I know to follow me.
We're not going to tag that name. Don't worry.
No, we're not going to tag it. But I find it so fun, and I love watching the rants. The rants are so good because it's so relatable to me. And I'm just like, man, I want to be friends with you.
Yeah, a lot of people have the perception that TikTok is just like kids dancing, and there absolutely is viral kids dancing, but there is like a side of TikTok for everybody. Like no matter what you're into, you can find creators and people making videos about things you enjoy, whether it's sports, wrestling, Lego, rants, and people are like fucking hilarious.
They're
like,
so funny. People
I wish I was that creative sometimes. And like
but
the amount of TikToks I send.
Yeah. Oh my God. I send TikToks all day to Casey and Kim, and they do it back too. Like I'll wake up and I'll have like 30 notifications. Yeah. Perfect. Like what a great way to start the day. It's just the complete opposite platform from the negativity that you find on other platforms.
Well, there's negativity. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, I haven't come across it yet, but I mostly rants. And honestly, I was like, I thought I was going to be the oldest person on TikTok, and everyone who comes up on my feed is in their 30s and 40s. And a lot of the men, like there's a lawyer who comes up and he's so funny. And he just rants about like his clients. And it's one of my favorite people who come up. I love it. I love TikTok. So thank you for that. I was always like, I'll never get TikTok. And Same. Here I am. I'm like, okay, it's I have a 30-minute time block right now for TikTok.
Yeah, no, same. I was like that for so long. And then I think it was March, I made one. And then two of my good friends who were like the same as me were like, we're never getting it, also got it. And now we're like, yeah, we always send each other TikToks. They got even more followers than me. It's stupid.
Oh, I'm going to go onto your TikTok and I'm going to try and steal all your followers.
I think I'm at like 90% women.
Well, that's good for you.
Yeah, because of the thirsty, I go to therapy, single TikToks.
See, that's funny you said that, because that's exactly what someone said to me. She was like, if you want to increase your following, you got to do some like thirsty, like mom dance or something. And I was like, no, I'm good. I don't need a lot of followers.
Yeah, as a man, I just say I'm emotionally healthy and go to therapy. And I would guess it's kind of like a kink at this point.
Do you follow Hannah Berner? She's from Giggly Squad, and she is, I think you'd love her. She was on that reality show Summer House, again, like me with my shit TV.
What's her name? Sorry.
Hannah Berner. but it's BER. There's an H in it.
No, I'm
I think-
looking. Sorry, people on YouTube. We're just shooting the shit now. Watching me look at my phone.
Same, yeah.
Burner.
Are you gonna keep this in the podcast? I want you to.
Oh yeah, why not?
Hannah.
Casey will definitely listen all the way through.
BERNER.
BERNER.
So she has two podcasts. She has Burning in Hell and Giggly Squad. Giggly Squad is her and her friend Paige, and they just like, you know, are girly together, and it's the best. But she is all about like the therapy, emotional energy kind of stuff. I think you'd love her page. She's very funny. She's a comedian.
I'll have to look her up. I don't think I follow her.
You should tag her when you post this and see if she watches it.
Although I do have 35 notifications I have to go through.
I just turned off my Twitter notifications yesterday because of that OPH thing.
No, that was all from TikTok. That was all TikTok. Did I miss anything? We went on a whole social media tangent. Where did I miss anything?
I know, and I just turned it
nursing?
on. What were we talking about?
We were talking about TikTok. But did I
TikTok.
miss anything on nursing? Did I miss any issue that you're like, shit, people need to know this?
No, I love that was just a casual conversation about it, because on my podcast I try and be like uber professional and not say too much. And tonight I probably had too much, or said too much, both. But no, I mean, there's a lot of issues right now, but I feel the same way as you with the hopelessness stuff. Like, I don't see the government changing Bill 124. I don't see staffing issues getting that much better. Like, and I know that sounds really sad and really negative, but I don't know. I'm not seeing a lot of hope right now. And I never thought that I would leave the nursing profession. And I'm still not sure I'd leave it fully, but I've definitely, made some strides and looked into some stuff to, potentially leave the hospital. And I really thought that I would like retire there. So it's just not something I think is a good fit for me for a lot longer unless things change. And I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
So it's too bad, but unless the public get involved and the public start writing to their MPs and MPPs and making a change and advocating for us, we've done the advocating and we're tired. We've just worked through 2 years of a pandemic, and then we're also advocating for our profession. We can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I think about my mom who spent, how old am I? 30. So at least 25 years in the nursing profession in different capacities, hospital, nursing homes. She did policy, and she got let go right before the pandemic. And her stories, especially in like the retirement homes, about how much she got dicked around, and like some of those group homes, those for-profit, like, it rhymes with Schmavera. Yeah, like just bad news bears. And now she runs a daycare. Like,
yeah, but is she happy?
Happier. She's like got like PTSD from the shit she went through with, especially later in her career.
Yeah.
As a director of care. Like,
oh my God.
It was bad.
Yeah. No. That sounds like a horrible job. Like that is a very, very, very difficult job. It's just, no, you're running everything. You're in charge of everything. And there's just no way that you come out of that being the good guy. And I don't think I could handle that. That's why I'm not sure I'd ever be a good manager, because I don't like when people don't like me, if I'm being honest. And that's like something I've really struggled with in the last couple of years, and something I've really worked towards. Like, I had a therapy appointment last week, and at first I was like, she doesn't get it. She's not a nurse. She sounded elderly, and we just weren't vibing. And then she said, like, you're taking everything at work too personal, and you have to set your boundaries, and they are your coworkers. They are not your work family. And they use that term to make you feel guilty so that you do more, and you prioritize them instead of your own family. And I was like, holy shit, my mind was blown, because I've used that term a million times. And I was like, you are right. Like we were talking about the struggle of balancing, feeling guilty of calling into work when my kids are sick or when I'm sick, and knowing that there's no one there to cover, and how I hate that. And it's hard to call in. You feel guilty, you're riddled with anxiety, your palms are sweaty. And she was like, you would be replaced in a second if you left. Like they would post your job before your obituary. So you owe them nothing. Your family is you owe everything to, and you need to stop thinking of them as a family member, and they are your coworkers, your colleagues, your workplace. And I was like, yeah, that whole thing of like wanting to be liked and accepted, like, no, it doesn't really matter. Like I am liked and I am accepted at home with my friends and my family, and that's where my priority always needs to be.
Yeah. And that's why we're now in the phase of the great resignation, and why
Hmm.
all of a sudden businesses and corporations are having trouble finding workers, because everyone's like, nah, fuck this. Like,
Yeah.
you need to pay me what I'm worth. No more of this bullshit. That, and it's true. I've used the term work family too. And like, I do genuinely care for some of my coworkers, that I will
Yeah.
go in
Same.
above
Of
and
course.
beyond, and
Of
I will
course.
do a good job. But you're right. And your therapist is right. The boundaries are
Hmm.
so important. And it's so difficult because we still have managers who are still so adverse to you saying no or putting a boundary. So we
Hmm.
have a lot to work on as like a culture. But like, we're moving at a rapid rate. And if healthcare, if media, if government, all these places of employment, if they're not going to keep up, I mean, they're going to be out of business because no one's going to want to work for them.
We're out of here. And like at nursing as well, like you're confined to that 12 hours. And there are a million jobs where you can work from home and set your own hours. The flexibility situation that's happened in the last 2 years, that norm of, I mean, for example, me as a parent, I'd love to get my kids on the bus every day. I at 7 in the morning, 6:45 actually, I drop two of my kids off at my neighbor's house. So I have to open their garage. They're all still in bed. I open their garage, I put my kids in there. I watch them take off their stuff. I give them a hug and kiss, and I send them off into an empty house because they're not awake yet, because I have to go to work. And I hate that. And I my neighbors are like my family. I adore them. I love them. And I wouldn't trust anyone else with my kids other than like my parents and them. But I still would really like to be able to bring them to school. I'd love for them to be able to sleep an extra hour, me get them to school, wave goodbye to them as they go on the bus. I love that. And it is so regimented that I must start at a certain time. And as far as the work that I have to do, it's just not necessary. I definitely could show up half an hour later and work half an hour later and still get the job done. And I think people our age are seeing that. Oh, well, my friend who barely graduated high school is making just as much money, and he's working from home every day and he has flex hours. So people want to do that, and they're going to have to adapt, and it's going to be a huge culture shock to, the upper level management, but it's adapt or the great resignation.
Yeah.
Because people are just going to leave.
Well, especially nowadays, like 12-hour shifts, like easy. Like what is it? 6 to 6, 7 to 7, 8 like your whole day. Like what? Like it is complete. I mean, I guess for staffing reasons, but like in life, whoever decided this, like holy hell, like a 12-hour shift, whether it's healthcare or at a factory, completely ludicrous and unnecessary.
There was a time for it, and I think to arguably you'd find a lot of people who love it. And on the exact other side of it, you find a lot of people who say this is just not doable anymore. And the 12 hours, so the 2 days, 2 nights they're tough. It's a lot of hours to work. But the 5 days off is nice. I never found it quite enough recovery. I would have liked one extra day, because that first day off, you're coming off of a night shift. So I would come home, I'd have something to eat. I'd go to sleep, wake up at 12, be groggy till 2, and then like either be up till 2 in the morning watching TV, or go to bed because I'm exhausted. Either that first day, you're not really that functionable for me. But I found the 12 hours a lot easier when I was younger. As soon as I had kids, it's not what I wanted anymore. And some people that have kids say it works really well for them. And those people should be able to do that. But the people who don't want to work 12 hours should have the option of working 8s or 6s or 4s or weekend working only or whatever. They have to figure out something that allows flexibility. You have to make the job appealing so people will stay. And right now you're not going to pay us more. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, it always, what was the thing before? It was always, well, if you don't like it, find another job. And now everyone's
Sure.
like,
Okay.
Yeah, everyone's like, fine. And then wait, whoa, hold on. Like, not so fast.
I love that. The Great Resignation. You should call the podcast that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's I mean,
the name.
That's what the media calls it anyway. It's like, that's why.
Oh, really? I haven't
Yeah.
seen it. That's very witty. I like it.
It's, yeah, I mean, it's more of an American thing than Canadian media, but like the New York Times and like they use, because that's like what's happening. People have
Globally too.
resigned.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's globally.
All the shift kit, like the shift work, and like you said, because you're expected to show up, be at work, do all this, and then meanwhile, like I'm sitting at home. I mean, the job's done. I'm very busy, but like I'm working from the couch in my underwear at like 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Go for a walk and then like come back, as opposed to like, waking up. I haven't even woke up before 8 a.m., in forever. I don't even know.
Listen, if you ever want to come over here and take care of my kids, if you're ever feeling a need to get up before 8 a.m., you just let me know.
Well, I feel very honored that you just said that you wouldn't trust anyone with your kids except your neighbors and your parents, and now apparently me. So,
Oh, I've seen some pictures of you with kids. I agree.
5.
Are they young?
I have 5 siblings under 13 and under.
Yeah, you can take care of my kids. That's fine.
And I have to babysit them sometimes.
Yeah, if you ever need them to have friends and also babysit my kids, please take them.
I kind of want to give up babysitting because there was a girl, a neighbor who I used to babysit when I was like 13, and she's engaged now. And I'm like, what? Pardon me?
I think I saw this. You do a story on it?
Yeah. Like, so I don't want to feel old anymore, I don't want to like be like 40 and then seeing your kids being engaged and being like, oh. And I'm me still being single, complaining about dating on TikTok.
But that's my entertainment on my TikTok time block. That's hard to say.
Listen, I think you're the second longest podcast now. Casey's the longest, so.
Oh, well, I'm honored. If I was going to be second place to anyone, it's definitely going to be Casey.
You know what? Down the road in 2022, you and Casey are going to need to come on together.
Oh, yeah.
I just decided that.
Why? You can join her when you interview the host on mine if you want.
Oh my God, I should, eh?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, just do a little like group fest, and I'll actually drink this time instead of just drinking my water. Like
I know, I'm really disappointed. I mean, I told you why I had already had a glass of wine beforehand. I think it's warranted when you're dealing with a poor little munchkin and Chio and just making sure her mom is fed for the night. We broke out the wine.
Yeah, definitely.
I had to. Poor little thing.
Beyond the Bedpan. So 7 episodes out now. It's everywhere you get podcasts. Website, social, your website, social.
At Beyond the Bedpan on Instagram, on Twitter, same thing. And also on TikTok. That one's not very active though. And my other one is at _. Same on everything.
Just got so many different profiles going. Love it. Social media star.
Someone asked me why I didn't just make Beyond the Bedpan the More Than the Mom one. And I was like, no, I want to keep parenting and nursing separate. So
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
This was fun. Thank you so much.
This was so fun. Thanks for having me back.
No problem. I look forward to joining yours at some point.
Thanks. I can't wait.
Comes down.
Bye, Ryan. Thank you.